I used to think believing in the pre-tribulation rapture was harmless, but I've changed my mind. I believe it to be dangerous, and here's why. First and foremost, nowhere in the Bible is there any teaching on a pre-tribulation rapture. 1 Corinthians 15, 1 Thessalonians 4, and Daniel 9 are the pre-tribulation doctrinal proof texts, but if you look at any commentary prior to the mid-1800s, you will never find one mention of a pre-tribulation rapture. You will only find that these texts point to the second coming of Jesus Christ, which takes place at the end of the world. The great theologian Matthew Henry's commentary summed up 1 Thessalonians 4 with these words: "This passage should comfort us, and this may be done by a serious consideration and discourse on the many good lessons to be learned from the doctrine of the resurrection of the dead, the second coming of Christ, and the glory of the saints on the day of the Lord." He says absolutely nothing about a pre-tribulation rapture. So why are there no commentaries about a pre-tribulation rapture prior to the mid-1800s? Simply, Rapture Doctrine wasn't taught until 1830. Church history spans 2,000 years, while the Rapture Doctrine spans 200 years. Not to get too far in the weeds, but simply pre-tribulation rapturists think all prophecy is centered on Zionist Israel. Every decade they open the Bible, grab their newspaper, and try to prove that every Bible prophecy is unfolding before our very eyes. It is sign watching at its best. I recall Jesus speaking about the dangers of sign watching. He told the Pharisees in Matthew 16, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign." This was his rebuke to sign watchers. So why is rapture watching so dangerous, deceptive, and destructive? Number one, where the teaching started. A so-called prophetess, Margaret MacDonald, had a vision and infiltrated the church with this vision in 1830. She was nothing more than a demon-possessed witch. Her teachings of a two-stage coming of Jesus was picked up by John Darby. John Darby discipled a man by the name of James H. Brooks. It was both of these men who mentored C.I. Scofield, who was responsible for publishing the Scofield Reference Bible in 1909. What really boggles my mind is the fact that this reference Bible that supports the pre-tribulation rapture was financed by elite Zionists in Europe, particularly Samuel Untermyer, who had connections to the Rothschilds family and was one of the most prominent Jews of his day. Untermyer was a prominent Zionist, not even a Christian. Number two, pre-tribulation rapture teaching is an actual attack on the doctrine of the resurrection that Jesus taught himself. Pre-tribulation rapture doctrine teaches a partial resurrection and then a second one at the end of the world. Jesus didn't teach this. Simply John 5 and 6 records Jesus teaching that an hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. And when will this be? The last day, which is Jesus' second coming. Jesus says nothing about a secret or partial resurrection. Number three, those who believe in the rapture tend to neglect Jesus' clear command to stay busy with his kingdom business until he comes. Parable after parable, Jesus taught and warned his disciples to be about his business until he returns, yet pre-tribulation rapturists are busy watching for the rapture. It is those who are fixated on everything going on in Israel and the sign of the times that aren't stewarding the talents as Jesus has commanded. Lastly, those staring into the sky, awaiting the rapture, tend to neglect so many areas of life that we as Christians are called to stand against, starting with standing against evil. The mindset is, I don't have to worry about any of this because the rapture is coming soon. But we are called to be watchmen. And unfortunately, Christians cease to uphold this duty because Jesus is coming to take us out. Therefore, it isn't our problem. I believe this is why Christians in America fail to influence society around them, because they are too busy being influenced by society. Many have zero backbone. One of the biggest arguments I get from pre-tribulation rapture believers are, why would God allow his bride to suffer through the great tribulation? My only response to this comment is, why would God allow his perfect son to be slaughtered, yet he's going to save us from temporal suffering when the Bible consistently tells us that we are to endure until the end? I hate to break this to you all, but God's people will not escape tribulation. God's people haven't escaped it and won't escape it. God saves us through it, not out of it.